Risk society. A major concern for humankind throughout history has been scarcity, obtaining enough food, shelter, and resources to survive. However, safety has recently emerged as a new concern. Technology has enabled many people, especially in developed countries, to live without hunger or resource scarcity. Risks such as radioactivity, genetic engineering, or environmental degradation have created anxiety about potential harm along with scarcity concerns. Security, symbolized by the phrase I am hungry, has been replaced in part by fear, the phrase I am afraid. As a result, a politics of eliminating scarcity is overlaid with a politics of minimizing anxiety and eliminating risk by providing safety, creating an equity and freedom from want society where scarcity is eliminated. In response, a risk society has emerged. The concept of risk society is primarily based on Ulrich Beck's works. Beck believes that modernization and industrialization are essential to the growth of industrial production. Modernization relies on scientific research and knowledge. Private corporate power is increasingly controlling and directing much of research and development. As a result, the locus of power shifts from the nation state to corporations. Corporations develop new technologies in order to maximize profits, creating unforeseen risks unequally distributed among society as a whole. Economic and technological projects operate blindly and deafly to consequences and dangers. Due to this, industrial risks are changing quantitatively and qualitatively. Aftercare or restoration are not possible, monetary compensation is not possible, and causality or blame cannot be determined. As a consequence, accountability for accidents cannot be established, and these industrial projects cannot be insured. This makes society unable to protect its citizens against industrial hazards. Citizens are no longer protected from industrial processes. A challenge is presented to the undisputed link between economic development and progress. Beck labels this phenomenon as the end of the other because this generalization of risks is not limited by space or time. Human history has seen one group inflict violence on another. Regardless of class or ethnicity, global environmental problems cause harm to everyone today. There is no population that remains immune from the risks generated by economic and technological development. Despite the dramatic differences in risk exposure and the ability of the powerful and well off to insulate themselves from immediate effects, degradation of the environment causes property to lose value. Skin cancer is caused by ozone depletion. Climate change raises sea levels worldwide, flooding the rich and the poor. There are winners and losers when it comes to the distribution of environmental risks across society. Different environmental degradation levels result in different risk positions. As with wealth, risks follow the social distribution of power, but inversely, wealth accumulates at the top, risks at the bottom. The entire society faces increased risks, but some segments are more exposed than others. A large amount of toxic waste is dumped in poor, underdeveloped countries or in low income neighborhoods near industrial production centers. Industrial pollution is disproportionately prevalent in these communities and nations, and their residents have little control over it. These highly impacted communities have the least educational, political, or economic resources to either resist or mitigate their exposures. The unequal distribution of environmental risks is also influenced by the class pattern, since governments and corporations often seek the path of least resistance when locating polluting facilities in urban and rural areas. Racial segregation contributes to the creation and maintenance of environmental inequality. because these neighborhoods are isolated socially and powerless politically. Polluters can locate locally unwanted land uses. The world system mirrors this distribution of risks as well. Environmental risks are greater in less developed and economically poor countries. As Beck points out, environmental risks pose a potentially explosive political threat. There is a development of a politics that denies or minimizes environmental degradation. It is therefore possible for the politics of a risk society to challenge the fundamental premises of industrial society. Whether our concepts of progress, prosperity, economic growth, or scientific rationality are correct or not is at stake in these conflicts. This conflict takes on the character of a doctrinal struggle within civilization over the proper path to modernity. In the first place, science's impartiality and rationality are challenged, and its supposed ability to develop objective knowledge is dispelled by its application. Rather than solving problems, science is seen as a social construction. The failure of techno scientific rationality to deal with growing threats and risks from civilization delegitimizes its legitimacy as an impartial and objective guide to action. Scientists' practices and assumptions become the subject of criticism. As advanced criticism expands economic production, it also increases technological risks. By concentrating environmental degradation in poor, minority, powerless, and least developed countries, political changes to systematic environmental risk reduction are minimized. More economically and politically well off populations can reap the benefits of economic production without paying its environmental costs. As a result, legitimacy problems related to environmental degradation are avoided by unequal sharing of environmental risks. As a result of this unequal distribution of environmental risks, social movements have emerged to resist the imposition of environmental risks on marginalized communities and nations at large. Beck views this movement as part of a reflexive modernization process. Reflexive modernization is a process of critically examining and reforming fundamental beliefs and social arrangements. Technology brings unintended consequences into our awareness and enables us to rationally modify them. A key aspect of reflexive modernization is the application of the precautionary principle to economic development. It involves a self conscious process where economic development is subjected to a conscious evaluation. Economic expansion and its risk distribution consequences are brought into public discussions by social movements, thereby allowing for a full consideration of actions. As a result, society learns more and its future development is subject to rational public debate. To conclude, the theory of risk society provides a new perspective on industrial risk. There has been a vast increase in technological disasters, and our old systems to deal with accidents like shipwrecks, factory explosions, and the like are no longer adequate.